Welcome to Indie Resources' second video on Node.js and Socket.io and our seventh video on how to build a HTML5 web game. If you haven't watched the first video, you might want to watch it. It shows us where we've gotten so far and how we installed, but you're still not out of the woods yet. There's one more thing that I'm not sure if this either is the correct way to do it, but it works for me and it works perfect, so I'm going to continue to do it this way until somebody says, hey, there's an easier way. But to me it works. But if you notice, I got another directory here. If you go to your main Impact Tut folder, make a new directory called socket.io, just like you did last time. Now, once you get that created, go into Node Modules, go into socket.io, go into lib and copy all these files. Take and copy them, go back to your socket.io and paste them right in here. Once you get those pasted, go to Impact Tut, go to Node Modules, go to socket.io, go to Node Modules again, go to Socket.io client and copy, and go to lib and copy the Socket.io client.js. Copy that out of there. If we go back, and don't ask me why, don't ask me, maybe it's just I don't have my files linked, but the way I got it working is you just paste it right back in here, go back to your main folder, go back into that Socket.io folder we just created, and paste it right here. I'm going to zip all this stuff up and give it to you guys in this video. I'll put a link on here, so you don't even have to do any of this installing and moving if you just want to grab mine. Everything seems to work just fine, just the way I have it, and so I'm assuming it's correct. Now, I'm sure there's ways to link it to make it all work out fine, but it works great for me, so I'm going to keep doing it that way until somebody says, whoa, that doesn't work. But like I said, it works. So if you want to, I'm just gonna zip up all these files, and you can just copy them directly in the directory, and then you can take this. What you can do is, if you want to use this for your own game, you can just take this server.bat. You really don't need these anymore. Just take the server, the node, your app, the Socket.io, and the node modules. Pull that out and put it in your own game, and just change your server.bat to find the directory, and you're good to go for any game. And you just change your app for what you want, and you can just continue to use this over and over again. And that's what I've been doing, and it works really fine. So now that we have that up, let me demonstrate what we have here. So let's run our server. Let's start it up, and you can see it started. Now I'm going to pull up my first my first one. There's no errors here, and you can see it's working. It even showed player joined, and if we go here, you can see it's broadcasting the packets. Let's refresh again, and we now have, you can see the server going crazy right now, and you can see we now have them both moving. Now the one thing you won't notice is the animation right here. If you click a whole bunch, the animation moves, but the animation doesn't move. I'm still working on that part. I'm going to get to it on the next video, but we're not going to have enough time for it anyway. But as you can see, anyway, we got this working. So now I'm going to go through and explain to you what all I've done. I'm going to give you the real meat of this, so you guys can kind of turn this into your own thing. The first thing I want to look at is the index.html. So go into your index. If you know here, notice here, temporarily I'm going to do this way. You can actually point this to your directory to pull this file, but I'm doing this as a way of keeping me remembered to run the server. It sounds silly, but it works really well, because if you attempt to load this without if you attempt to play this game without the server, it's going to give you an error and nothing's going to load. And let me give you an example of that. If we close out our server here and we go back to our client and refresh, it doesn't load. The reason why, it can't find, IO is not defined. So that's because it can't find this localhost running at 8080 looking for the server. Now if we go back in here and we rerun our server and hit refresh, you'll see that it's loaded. So that's why I have it that way. It's kind of to remind me, hey, you need to run it. So if we go down here, and a couple things that I added, I wanted the players to have random names. I didn't want to get into creating text file or a text thing where they can type in their own name and all that stuff. We'll do that later, but for now I just wanted to give random names for testing purposes. So all I did was create a variable name rand, and then I made a random number times 100. You can put it to whatever you want. We can change it to 999 if we want them to have even more. And then I just made player name equals player plus name rand. And if we go to, well, we'll go to that in a minute. So the next thing we got to do is we got to start this connection, and what we do is we create the socket. and the socket is just io.connect, and then wherever we're at. We're on localhost, and if you remember, I said we're running on port 8080, so it's looking for the host there. So every time we hit refresh, an index loads up. That's the first thing it does. It starts a socket with this index, with this client, and says, okay, look for that server, and bam, it finds the server. Which we can, well, we'll just leave it running. The next thing we're going to pause on just for a minute. I'm not going to go into what's going on here first. So let's go back into our let's go back to our app. So the app's running. It's running on 8080, and if we go into our player and we scroll all the way to the top, I added a couple things here. First off, a net timer. I'll get to that in a minute. Name equals player. The reason why is I want to take the current client and I want to name him player versus I'm going to name all of the other players, all of the instance players who are other players. I'm going to name them other player so we can use this later for bullets and things like that, and we'll go into that later. The next thing is I created a new property called game name, and that's whatever that player name, so whatever that random created, and we'll let them choose their own name later. It's automatically going to be put in that instance of this, so we can just type this.game_name equals whatever the player. If we go down into our init, the first thing we need to do when the client joins the server is it needs to initialize player, which is a socket that I created, or a function that I created. And what we're going to do is we're doing socket.emit. So what we're telling the server, hey, we've joined, run initialize player, and we want to send initialize player this.game name. So whatever the player's name is, we want to send it to it. So that's going to go to the server. Remember, your server is app.js. So if we go to initialize player, here it is right here. The server is going to get a message from the client that says, hey, initialize player. Oh yeah, and here's this player name. So the server goes, well, okay, if the socket was turned on and it said initialize player, let's go ahead and pass into this function this new player, the player name, which I'm naming here new player name, as in the variable name that we're going to use. So and I can go ahead and delete this out of here. This was something I was working on. So now it's going to say the socket.client name. I'm creating a new property for the socket, and I'm calling it the new player name. I'm calling it whatever player name was passed. So that's what socket.client name is going to be. That way we can divide each socket by its own name. Then I'm creating an array, which I've started up here. Var player list equals a new array, and I want to push that name into it. So I'm now creating an array of every player that's joined, and every time a new player joins, I'm pushing that name into that array, so I know who's all there. So the next thing I want to do, there's a couple different emits that you have. Let's start with this one, iosockets.emit. iosockets.emit broadcasts to every single client on the board. It says everybody who's connected, you need to run a function. You need to run your function called add player, and I'm going to pass you the array player list plus this new player name that's in here. So now we go. So now the server is telling all the clients, hey, run this function that you have called add player. So if we go to our index, and let me also state, right now I'm putting all these functions in the index. We are going to change that later, but for ease of use, I'm putting it all in the index, so we only have to go to one file, and we're not. It just makes it a little easier right now. We'll change it later. Don't worry about it. Or you can feel free to change it as long as you include it. So next. So the server's telling all the clients, hey, run your function add player. So the index is saying, well, okay, the socket's on. It's saying I need to run add player, and it's passing me an array called player list, and it's passing me this player list and this new player name. So I'm dropping it into player list and other player name. So I'm just recreating the variable name. It's still going to have that name in there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create a we're going to get entities by type, and we're going to get the players. We're going to get the current player, which is you, and we're going to grab his message box, and that's why I put the message box property inside the player. And we're going to say the player message box. We're going to say the player message box equals the current what's in there plus a new line, the other player's name joined. So whatever gets passed here, which was the player name, joined. Then we're going to say we're going to run a for loop. For every single player that's inside player list, we need to say if it doesn't equal the current player. In other words, if it doesn't equal player.game name, so we don't want a player in the board to represent the player that's already there. This is you. Let's just say you, the current client. We don't want it to be, but every other person that's in there, we want to spawn a new entity called entity other player. If you go over to player, I've added it to this player file because let me tell you a difference here too. When you create, and we haven't got into this yet, but we will in the next couple videos, and this is more of an impact thing right now. If you're not using impact, then just remember whatever you want to spawn there, whatever you want to create there, that's where it's going to be created, is in this index. You're going to create it here for everything that's there. So however you're doing it, if you're not using impact, that's up to you, but just know it goes here, and you'll understand how I'm doing it. But for those of you using impact, what I've done is, and we'll get into a little more of this later, so don't worry about it if you don't understand. For every entity that you want to use with the Weltmeister, that you want to have it as an actual entity that's going to be placed, you need to have a new .js file. I'm not going to place any other players physically through the Weltmeister, so I can put it in with the other player, and it's still a usable entity. We just can't use it through Weltmeister, and it will not show up in Weltmeister, and it doesn't need to because we don't want to hand place other players. So with that said, and like I said, we will go over that a little bit more in other videos. I've created another entity called other player. It's just like the player, except for you notice the name is other player. The game name is blank, and we'll get to that in a minute. Animation I defaulted to 1. Everything else is pretty much the same, a lot of this, except for it's got a couple new functions, and we'll go over those in a minute. But the one big thing about the update function is this .animation, and this is where it moves it, and this is where it places the actual new player, and this is where it creates the animation, which currently isn't working. I'm still working on getting that working, which I had it working before, and somewhere I lost something, but we'll get in the next video. But it's not important in this video. So what's happened is, if we go back to our index, it has created this entity other player. I just set it as a default right now, just to place, and you will see the player get placed, and we are going to fix this later, but like I said, we're going to start baby steps on this. But I'm setting the property of game name to this player list I, so whatever that name is built inside that player list, we want to give him that name. So if we go back up here, you'll notice when I refresh here, he disconnected, what you've seen, and then it's giving player 815 join. That's what it's doing. It's saying now, if you notice, 815 disconnected, player 13 join, and it looks like I may have a little message box issue. Well, there it goes. It's just going really quick. You'll see that it's creating. It's saying it's disconnected, which I'll show you, and then it's also reconnect. It's saying he connected in there. So that part is working great. So now that we know the player's added, now we got to start doing our updates. There's different ways to run an MMO when it comes to updating something. You can have this interpolation that kind of it suggests where the player is going to be going and where it thinks it's going to be going in the next couple seconds, so you don't have to update it. So pretty much it projects it. If you're moving one direction, and most MMOs use this, WoW, all of them, it calculates where it thinks you're going, and it makes you go there. And if you ever notice when you start lagging, the players are still kind of moving, that's because it had projected where it was going. It hasn't received an update from the other client yet, so it's not getting anything, so it's still projecting that he's running. It only accepts new changes whenever new changes happen, and that's something we will probably move to, but for now I've set it on a timer. And to give you an idea of what I'm doing, let's go to our player, and let's go up. And okay, so the player, I did change some of this a little bit inside the move, so you might want to just take a quick glance at it, but I didn't change a whole lot. It was just to make this animation work, and it's nothing really complicated. You'll understand if you just read it a little bit. I just made some directions in here. The one thing I want you to see is, after the player is moved in the update, I've created a net timer as a property. If this .net timer is less than 1, then this .net timer equals 5. Right now I'm on 5. You can lower this, you can raise this, and then I want to socket.emit. That means I want to send to the server. I want to call the function on the server called receive data. I'm going to do this position Y, this position's X, this position's Y, the current animation, and then my name. And then I want to do, and then after that's done, I want to start counting down the timer. If you don't use this timer, it'll still run fine, but the thing is, you're going to be passing data like crazy. I mean, crazier than I am now, and to be honest with you, I'm passing too much data as it is. I mean, we're passing, 2 packets just constantly over and over again, which is going to happen, but as we start getting more and more players, this is going to start to become an issue. So we are going to have to do a little bit more predictive type sending data. So anyway, we went to the server and we did our receive data. So if we go to our server, now the server is going to receive a socket on from that client, and it's going to say, okay, we got to run, here's our function receive data. I'm receiving the position X, the position Y, the current animation, and the game name. So now, if you notice here, I've got socket.broadcast.emit. You have a couple different ways of doing something. You have socket.broadcast.emit passes data only to the other clients and not the client that originally called them. So if I send the data, I won't receive this right here. Only the other clients connected. The reason why is you don't want it to go to the original guy because he's the one that sent it. So I'm going to call to all the other clients, player move, and I'm going to send, just all I'm doing is resending that data to the player. So the client's sending it to the server, and the server's turning around and sending it to all the clients except for the one who sent it. So that way all the clients are getting it. If we go to our index and we go to our player move, okay, now our client's saying, okay, I just got called to player move, passing in all the data. What I'm doing now is I'm creating a array of all the other players. I want to know who this client knows, all the other players that have been added. So okay, let's grab all the other players. If there is other players, then we want to do a var I and other player, and all that's doing is it's looping through all the other players. If this game name or equals other player name I game name, so in other words, we're looping through all of the other players to find the one that's the guy's names, because that's the only guy we want to move, right? So all we're doing is we're taking and moving his position, and then we're creating his we're supposedly setting up his animation, which we'll get working. So that's all we're doing in player move. We're just passing data back and forth every 5 ticks, and we can increase that some to help with. But like I said, I want to do a little more of a projection type MMO if we're going to do this. But anyway, we're passing the information to the server every time we move. And basically that's how, well, right now we're not even doing every time we move. We're just doing every 5 ticks. We're passing that information, the server's passing it back, and the players are updating that person. So that's all I'm doing to make it work. The ideal situation in this is every time the player clicks the button, it moves that player, and that's all the data it sends until that button is up pressed or something else happens. And that way, if a player is just holding down his button for 10 seconds, you went 10 seconds without ever sending any information because nothing ever went. And that's the ideal way to do it, and that is the way we're going to do it. But like I said, we're starting with baby steps. So one other thing I want to do is what happens when they disconnect. Well, there is a function in the socket IO that's called disconnect, and there's also one that's on connect, and there's a couple different functions, but the one I'm calling now is socket.on disconnect. That is not called by the client because the client's already disconnected. That's called when a client disconnects. This is automatically run. We want to delete player list, delete out of that array that we're holding, that player list, that socket.client name. That's why I called that, because we got to be able to save that. And so we're going to take that array that we're passing back and forth, and we're going to get rid of that client. And then what we're going to do is for everybody else left in player list, if the player list, if that I equals the socket.client name, we're basically splicing it, and we're just removing one is all we're really doing. I mean, there's not a whole lot going on there. We're just getting rid of that guy. But the next thing we need to do is we need to broadcast to everybody, of course, but the client. We need to do message. We need to call the message, and then we're also calling net replayer. So that's 2 things being passed, and this could possibly be put into one, but right now it's not a big deal. But we did pass the new player list, and we did pass the client name. So if we go back to our index, let's start with our message, which we can technically, I should probably rename this to disconnect message, but for now we'll leave it there. So it's calling the message. I'm just passing in data. So we're doing var player equals, we're calling on the player because we just want to grab the message box is all we're doing. So we're just going to say, hey, this guy disconnected. That's all we're doing. Now with the net replayer, what we need to do is we need to update all the other players with, we need to get rid of that player, and then we need to go ahead and update everybody, and it's just kind of a quick way to refresh everybody. So socket.on net replayer, we're grabbing the player list, we're just once again grabbing an array, and we're just updating. And if that player is in that net, in other words, the one thing we need to do is we need to delete whoever's in this entity group, because just because the server deleted it out of the array doesn't mean his character's still there. That other player still exists. That entity still exists, and we need to delete that entity. So that's what I'm doing, is I'm going through and I'm finding where that dude's name is basically, and I'm killing it. I'm killing that entity. And then and I may explain that. I explained that a little wrong. What I'm doing is I'm killing all the entities. I'm killing everything. Is this the best way to do it? As of right now, yes. Is it the best way is it the way we're gonna end up with? No, we're gonna come up with a new way, but I'm just trying to, like I said, baby steps to start with. So we're killing all the players, and then we're gonna rebuild them without that name in there. That's the easiest way to do it. Just kill them, rename it. We could delete that, kill that single entity, and we will get to that, but I just felt this is easier for everybody to understand to begin with. So we go through, we kill every single entity in there when someone disconnects, and we just rebuild them. Sounds like a lot of work. It's not really, not for the client and what we're doing. Get 1,000 players on here, yeah, it's going to be a little more work, so that's why we're going to change it later, but for 2, it's not a big deal. So I hope everybody understands this. I know regardless of how badly I explained it, I know it's better than the documentation. And I know many of you are coming here just for the socket.io and just for the node. And if you're doing that, all you're doing is creating functions that call on each other. That's all socket.io and node is just being able to pass and call functions in between each other. So in your head, think, if I need to get something done when something happens, I need to create this function of like socket.on and then whatever that function is, and you can pass whatever data you want, but just remember to keep that data small. And you can kind of come in here and see what it's doing and see that you can see here it's doing player move. Of course it's constantly calling player move, and it's calling the player's name and all that good stuff. So that's basically all it is to it. Now we're going to work with this more. We're going to continue to add new functions and features to the game that are part of the multiplayer, and I guess from this point out we're going to start doing nothing but multiplayer. I had so many people ask for it that I just figured, oh, let's go ahead and do the multiplayer now, and then we'll figure out the game as we go.